So, I arrived once again with another video essay format since I got a good response from the last one. Today I thought I would talk about one of those things I often hear complaints about, and that's quite often as well, and that is the standardization of premium format. So, what do I mean by this? I mean the process of premium decks using more and more standard cards to the point that some decks have become almost completely comprised of standard units outside of their G-zones. But, down to the main question, why has Premium been utilising more and more standard cards? It seems suitable that we start at the starting point of any Vanguard game, so let's talk about why the standardization of Premium occurs with Forerunners versus Vanguard V-Series starters. As Standard began to separate from Premium, and as more and more cards were made, one thing became very quickly apparent. We were not going to be receiving the Forerunner-style skills we knew in the past, since all V starters own the same simple skill of when ridden on, you could draw one card. By making cards more linear in effect, I'm sure the aim was to make the game easier to understand and get into for new players, as the reboot was generally targeted at attracting a whole new audience. But that aside, we start to see V starters being run over older Forerunners in Premium. Factors leading to this could be summarised as a speed up in the game, as standard cards made early games stronger. So, bonus resources such as soul and extra cards in hand helped in defense and for paying costs. Instant reward versus potential reward later in the game became a balance. You could get an instant reward by simply riding on the V-Series rearguard there and then. But when riding on a Forerunner, you gained a rearguard, with generally 5k power base, though that did also depending on certain cards and clans. But to serve as a booster to your units over the next few turns. Generally, the stronger Forerunner effects only became usable once you started striding, although that's not always the case. And these effects varied quite greatly from drawing cards, searching or restanding units, with a few examples, and usually placed back in soul to pay their cost. While in some cases, such as the former Forerunner Bubble-Edged Draco Kid, you could draw 2 or more cards when using his skill effectively, and that would in theory be stronger than using a V-Series starter that only draws a single card. But you have to take into account the processes involved. You are guaranteed the activation of a V-starter as long as you ride. Meanwhile, the Forerunner is similar to an investment. It carries multiple risks. It can be retired or face other forms of removal before it reaches maturity and its effect comes into play. Instead of gaining the extra card in hand, you can put effort into a future investment or an effect, whether offensive or resource-based, and have that taken away due to your opponent's involvement. And while personally I feel this adds a layer of skill to the game, and with playing to remove opponents' skills as they are placed openly onto the board, I understand that eventually that is outweighed by the strength of purely drawing a card and having one in soul on first ride. To finally cap off this section though, the addition of Quick Shields as an additional effect of V-Series starter and not a game rule may well have been the final nail in the coffin for Forerunners outside of the very few clans that have Forerunners powerful enough to still be in use. For example, Enigmatic Assassin in DI, or some Kagero builds running the old Conroe, allowing them to search out heal triggers and other things that could be useful. So this leads us to the next reason why standard cards are being used over older cards in premium format. Simply, they are stronger. Power creep does as power creep does. The standard grade 3s and force grade 2s have higher base powers than older units, which is generally being 12k to 13k base in the case of most grade 3s at this point. And while a slight power increase may not seem that significant, there is quite a large number of older units that are designed to attack the 11k base power levels, with a lot of power gaining effects being very small just to get them to that 11k margin. Just giving them just enough to hit the opponent's Vanguard, without any triggers of course and damage triggers. So if we look at older units, we can see their strength and skills are often largely based off generation break in the more useful ones. Symbols specialise in the number of face-up G units in your G-zone, or on your Vanguard circle, required to activate a skill. This of course requires you to be able to stride before skills come online. While you can bypass this partially with more recent printed cards like Tempest Sphere, or cards that have no GB requirement, such as Tidal Assault, it becomes more dependent on if they have a counterpart in Standard that does the same thing for a lesser cost or does it better than the older card. Standard focuses on earlier phases of the game, and not just the ability to stride or legion. They usually have lower costs and higher numbers gained on skills, and they're designed to survive and deal damage in a format where trigger values are of 10k on defense and offense, compared to the 5k boost gained from older triggers, from Vanguard G and further back in format. Many older cards don't reach anywhere near the same values of power that standard cards can, and often have lower shield values. Grade 1s, for example, the Grade 1 design has changed greatly to the point where there are most Grade 1s at this point in time are focused on resource gathering, and now have a 10k base shield. When you compare that to the older Grade 1s, which often had rather niche effects, generally based on accelerating winning scenarios, and they also have 5k guards. And so while it might not seem like a large increase, to 10k base shield is actually quite large when it comes down to it. This also leads us to talk about the trigger lineup changes. Premium has mainly adopted standard triggers along with the addition of triggers designed to hold standard card values from the premium collections, or allowing for the bonus stride, fodder and skills on those cards, so it's basically a creep forward for those as well. So some older triggers are still run in select clans that hold particularly powerful triggers, such as Tarot in Genesis or Shadow Paladin's trigger lineup in some builds, along with occasionally people running older heals that allow them to countercharge and soul charge, because as heal values hold slightly lower, in general you're going to be discarding them for G guards in premium format. So premium decks in general have adopted the newer heals though, and the Sentinel draw triggers especially, as the heals provide larger shield values outside of your generation break and generation guards, and the Sentinel draw triggers allow more main deck space, as you can now place your perfect guards into the trigger lineup, which means you have more space for valuable grade 1 units. A decent number of guard restricts as well at the time in Vanguard G era were focused around grade 1 and above, hence they were designed to target Sentinels that were grade 1 exclusively at the time. But now the existence of grade 0 Sentinels often allows the bypassing of these guard restricts in most cases, while there are still cases where grade 0 guard restricts have gained relevancy just due to the fact that we now have a lot of people running grade 0 Sentinels. The main aspect of standard that has shown itself in premium though is within the imaginary gift system. So during G era it was fairly commonplace to have a grade 3 unit that had a skill that activated when you stride, often bringing benefits to the deck's playstyle. Meanwhile, the grade 3 units in standard provide the newer imaginary gift system, allowing for the access of gift markers which can permanently alter the state of the game or grant valuable resources. These benefits stack as the game goes on, as you ride more and more grade 3s. When you compare these imaginary gifts to on-stride skills, it soon becomes quite clearly apparent that with the exception of a few powerful older units such as Luard, gaining permanent extra critical, permanent power gains, permanent extra circles, or a perfect guard outweigh most on-stride skills or most skills that may have had something to do with striding or previous iterations of attack skills, such as the limit break stuff. For example, Davos's on-stride skill to call a unit to rearguard circles back in G format, allowing it to give it to resist and the ability to attack from the back row for a unit with wave ability, a useful ability that can provide an extra attacking circle on your field to increase the attack numbers. But if we compare this to the standard printing of Davos, that simply grants an imaginary gift Axel on ride, which also gives you an attacking circle with bonus power gain, potentially even a draw if you choose Axel 2, which most people do. So on one hand we have gifts being granted on ride, while on the other we have on-stride skills granted by striding. The on-ride gifts is available instantly as soon as you ride up to grade 3, while the stride skill is only available once you gain access to striding. So once again, another advantage of standard units shows as well passively gaining gifts. They have strong abilities as well that can be utilised when first riding to grade 3, or even instead of striding, presenting more options in your choice of play. This now makes having the first grade 3 ride potentially more advantageous, allowing decks to have more of a presence during this point in the game, which previously they'd often lacked, outside of a few cases such as Gridora being able to block up a column. And it also places more risk on grade stalling your opponent, because if you start to dwindle on resources, they can suddenly break out onto a strong grade 3 turn and effectively wipe you there. If you can win on grade 3 ride, why wouldn't you? So this has often been seen with cards such as Anger Blader and NLK Turbo in Premium, as those decks can effectively pull off OTK turns on their Grade 3 rides. Standard has also brought with it new and upgraded effects and playstyles which greatly benefit Premium strategies. For example, the superior riding of both Gold Paladin's Ezel and Shadow Paladin's Phantom Blaster engine. Combine these with the changes to stride rules, allowing the decks to reach Grade 3 faster, stride upon their opponent's Grade 2 going first. So simply accelerating the game has had large benefits usable for both clans at the moment, along with Bermuda Triangle. They also have the ability to do such a thing. And I will more likely go into this more in depth in future videos. Potentially, I do plan to do a future video on the issues of superior riding. Another contributing factor to the use of standard cards is the design of strides themselves. We received 2 sets targeted at Premium format since the creation of Standard format, Premium Collection 2019 and Premium Collection 2020. Each of these brought new strides and updated triggers, holding values equating to the values that are now expected of standard triggers. So in the first set of the Collection 2019, the Premium Collection 2019 set, we saw multiple strides aimed to support previous playstyles and help rejuvenate premium clans that have been without support for a long length of time. We can see this in cards such as Violent Ace for the GB8 Stool build and History Build Dragon, allowing for Time Leap to become relevant in some way again. But at the same time, several of the strides within the set actually supported the standard playstyles over the previous ones. For example, we have Katrina in Neonectar, supporting token generation, Spear X designed to make the superior ride even more effective against unsuspecting opponents who give you too much damage, Gluttony Neberos, allowing you to use Equip Gorge to pay its costs. These units allowed a strong integration of standard cards and playstyles of previous strides that did not mesh so well with the new standard playstyles. There are many others, for example Gastile, which allowed the copying of abilities and utilising standard cards and strong standard grade 3s and effectively allowing them to perform even stronger turns just using the abilities of their own standard cards. This resulted in the standards playstyle moving into premium format, often far stronger than the previous iterations of decks within the clans, so the token deck for Neonectar is far stronger than any of the Bloom variants that might have existed at the time. So, leading into Premium Collection 2020, we saw yet more strides designed with the standard mechanics in mind. For example, Shadows and Royals gained strides that amplified the strength of their Grade 3 units by copying their abilities. Narukami gained Stun Bursts that emphasised Vanquish's standard playstyle by unstriding itself. Link Joker gained Barrio End Dragon, which actually allowed them to remove gifts and therefore was directly targeting the gift system. Neonectar again received Sandarine, working once again based on tokens. And there are even some strides that might not have seemed so focused on the standard playstyle, such as Gembold Dragon, as it doesn't seem to link directly, but it is actually still designed around the standard playstyle. As to get the full potential out of the card, requires you to have at least one Axel circle, requires 6 or more rested rear guards to restand units, a feat that's currently impossible without Axel generation generated by standard cards. Clearly, Bushiroad's aimed to help transition of standard cards into premium format by providing a bridge across the gap in the form of standard friendly strides. This has held a large part in the standardization of the premium format. So, some premium players complain to me that they don't like running standard cards in premium as it doesn't feel the same as they're used to, and my simple response to that would be that if G had continued and standard had never come to be, they would still be making changes and replacing units in their decks with stronger ones, as it's the natural process of any card game and power creep. If it wasn't a standard card, it would have been whatever else has just recently been printed, and if it wasn't the case that the format and the game itself would stagnate and eventually come to an end similar to Buddy Fight, although there are other reasons for that. And while there are many units I love from the older eras, and there are very few that I can run, I understand that I need to play what works unless playing more casually. Similarly, I often hear the complaint from standard players that there are too many cards to read in premium format, and everything is too much for them to want to get into the format. And many of them don't understand that in many cases, premium decks are largely comprised of standard cards at this point, so simply acquiring a few strides can let them experience premium, simply built off their already existing standard decks. The format isn't truly that different from the one they're already playing. It's simply an extra layer on top of the one that they've already learned, and it adds to the game in ways that I think standard still struggles to do in terms of game depth and decision making. So in conclusion, The use of standard cards within Premium was inevitable as the game progressed and the power creep continued. We have already started to reach a point where standard grade 3 units are arguably on par, if not stronger than strides for several clans, as we're starting to see them come out. And whether the upcoming overdress will be able to change this or not, only time will tell. The one thing that's certain is the main driving force of this is power creep, which is natural anyhow to occur in any card game, but in general that will be a topic I'll tackle another day. So, once again, we've reached the end of the video, and this is the part where I'll nudge you towards the subscribe button and click a like, just like Standard has nudged its way into Premium. If you have points of your own to make, or you think I've missed anything, please go ahead and discuss it down in the comments, but as always, please be polite about it. Till next time.